Hello and welcome to today's Training Ace live session on 6 financial benefits of good sustainability marketing. Well, you may be asking, sustainability and financial benefits. Isn't sustainability all about the good feeling that you get because you're doing something altruistic and good for the future generation and saving the earth? Or sustainability, can it be a part of core strategies for your tourism business? Can sustainability efforts actually benefit your financial bottom line? And we're all here today to find out. And if you're interested in learning about this topic, you're definitely in the right place, as we are joined today by a leading expert on all things responsible tourism. Our presenter, Dr. Javier Font, is Director of Respond Eco, which supports tourism businesses and destinations around the world to implement effective responsible tourism communication strategies. He also teaches for the Responsible Tourism Management Master's Program at Leeds Bucket University in the UK. And today during the presentation, you also have the chance to learn more about what Respond Eco does and why we're talking about financial benefits of responsible and sustainable tourism marketing. For those of you who are joining today live, here's a quick reminder. You can see on the right-hand side window a chat box that you can type in your comments and questions. You're welcome to use this to share your comments as well as when you have questions. And at the end of the session, this 1 hour session, will have a Q&A discussion segment as well. And the recording of this session, the video recording of this session, as well as the presentation slides, will be available after the event through Training Ace website. And with that, I think that was all the information I need to share. And Xavier, over to you.
Thank you, Jaco, and thank you for inviting me to speak today. I'm really excited to talk about different benefits, financial benefits of good sustainability marketing. And the reason why I want to talk about this is because very often sustainability, like you rightly said, has been seen as something that we should do for altruistic reasons. And I agree, we should do it for altruistic reasons, but at the same time, it is important for businesses to try to understand how can they become more successful as a business. Because frankly, if you as a business make more money, you will also be in a position where you will be able to do more of the altruistic things that you may be interested in. And the first benefit I see of better marketing and better communication is making sure that you learn how to save money as a result of engaging with your customers better. We find that saving money is easier than making money, so let's start with the easy things first. Let's look at the ways in which you can use better communication with your customers as a way of getting them to contribute to cutting down some of your costs. First point here to consider is ask nicely. Make sure that when you ask consumers to participate in your sustainability practices, you do it in a way that you use what I call the 80-20 rule, not the one you already know, but the rule basically says that you need to demonstrate that you have done 80% of the work and you're just asking your consumers to contribute with a very final bit. So this cup, for example, that we got in here says, look, drink in the view, stunning isn't it? We aim to keep it that way. That's why they use all these natural toxic-free detergents and cleaning materials that prevent damage to the beach, the sea or wildlife. And if you turn the cup round, it says, and all you have to do is put me in the bin. So it demonstrates that you've done most of the work, you've given it a lot of thought and a lot of care, you've written it in a way that is interesting to the customer. I find too many sustainability policies and signs about towel reusage and so on that have been written in a very simple way, just using an A4 piece of paper and without much care and without much thought. And I think that consumers then tend to not respond very well to that. Also, you need to think about what will be the kind of language that you'll use. So if you basically just say, I am an eco-friendly business, or I want you as a customer to do something that's eco-friendly, most customers really won't know what it is that you're asking for, because most of those customers are away from their usual comfort zone, away from their home, and therefore they don't really get to understand what is sustainable in the destination where you are. So messages like these that we see all over the place that says it's our policy whenever possible to recruit local staff, or where possible work with local suppliers, are really, really terrible messages. Imagine for a second, all of you who are listening to this session now are guests at my wedding, and the bride is walking up the aisle, and I'm the groom, and at the top end, and I'm just waiting for my bride to arrive, and I have to read my wedding vows. My wedding vows go as follows. Darling, I will be a good husband whenever possible. I don't think I would be married today. I think I would have to put much more emphasis and interest and thought really into how I would communicate this message. So equally, something that you should try and do is whenever you go back to your business and you see some of these messages that are really vague and sound non-committal, like whatever possible, try and find a way of improving your message. The second point I want you to think about is how to be trustworthy. People will only think that you are trustworthy if you give them evidence, but also if you speak with empathy. So they need to realize that you are a person with similar values to them and that you're providing evidence of what you're trying to do in a way that is appealing to them. So try and write in first person, include a photo of yourself as the person that's communicating the message, use testimonials of, for example, food suppliers or other individuals that basically are there to vouch for the fact that what you're saying makes sense. So if you talked about sustainable food, for example, on your website, it's not going to work particularly well. But if you talked about my great food suppliers, and then sustainability is implicit within great, and you show me who these people are and why they particularly take care of their food, is going to work much better. So as part of being trustworthy, one of the things you may want to do is show how the press has, for example, talked positively about you, or how previous customers have talked positively about you. And what you're trying to do here is show what makes you different and why customers should basically read all about you. So using links to from your website to previous articles in the press or quotes from others will really be quite helpful in that sense. I want you to think about how to be honest. And being honest basically is making sure that you communicate exactly what you really mean. So do not try to say, for example, that you are asking me to reuse towels because you think that this is going to save planet Earth. We both know that this is not true. You want me to reuse towels because you want to save money, and you may have some other motives as well. So the message, for example, that we see in Accor hotels right now that says reusing towels saves us money. The money we save, we're going to give to charity to plant trees, was a much more honest message. And of course, we know they're doing it. But at the end of the day, even though, what's really honest about the message is that they're putting across the message in a way that it's dealing with some of the potential doubts that you have as a potential business or as a potential consumer up front. So you need to be much more open about your motives. So, for example, telling your consumers what the calories are going to be of the drinks that you're offering to them, not after they've already bought the drink, but at the time when they're about to buy the drink, is much more helpful than telling them later on. Trust me, people have an ability to ignore that left-hand side column on the calories if that's what they really want to do. But this business also tells me that they have increased the sales of Americanos, which is great because actually producing an Americano is much cheaper than producing a cafe latte. The price difference that is here does not justify actually the difference in price in production. But the other thing they're telling me is that there's an increase in number of customers that when they buy an Americano, they also buy a cake. And this has to be explained by psychology in some way or another. I can't quite pin down what theory that would be. But people have basically believed that they have allowed themselves that budget to actually be able to use some of those calories they were going to use otherwise towards their cafe mocha, now towards something else. And so the business basically says that, look, by being honest and being upfront with my messages, I've actually found it easier to get the customers to then react the way they want to. So providing them with information that was useful for the customer to take their decisions made me a much more trustworthy and honest business. I would like you to think about how to be humorous. And humor is actually really powerful in terms of communicating sustainability messages. And this is the case because very often when we travel, we find that we don't want to be made to feel guilty. There's already 51 weeks in the year where I feel very guilty, thank you very much. And the 52nd week when I'm traveling, I just want to forget and I just want to enjoy myself. So using humor is a great way of actually cutting through that filter that I am putting there to block myself from any undesirable messages. So the message we've got in here, no smoking, it makes your breath smell and your teeth go horrid, as well as being a danger to the people who live in our forest, was really useful to getting children to tell their parents how to behave. And what's interesting about it as well is that the message was pointed at the height where it was clearly targeted at children, not at parents, because they knew that the best police for parents' behavior would be their children. But clearly, the same idea of using humorous message could be used in all sorts of other messages directed both to adults as well as to children. Try and use messages that will be engaging. Try and find messages that mean that you and I share the same values. And using these as a way of sharing values is also a way of increasing that trust and reducing that dissonance between perceiving the customer as somebody that is a dollar on legs and the business somebody who just wants to grab that dollar. So I remember this particular tour operator, Families Worldwide, here in the UK, that has a very interesting message as far as I'm concerned, that was saying to me, look, what I'm finding more and more as I travel is parents like you, these basically world. And I'm thinking, wow, I read this, I'm thinking the person is communicating this message understands me. He is a parent like me. There was a photo of him with his 2 children next to this message. And I'm feeling like this person is able to sell me a holiday that will make me feel like actually we're going to get somewhere and we're going to be able to do things together. This holiday he's selling to me is something that I can relate to and something I will want, not just because it's a holiday, but because this person is promising my children back to me. So what I want you to think about is what would be the kind of tips that we've got here so far you would be most likely to implement of the 5 that we just mentioned before we move on to the next financial benefit. Ayako, over to you.
Yeah, so if everyone should be able to see now in the live screen on the right-hand side the questions. Sorry, I just started it. So you can select one of the answers that you see. That's exactly the same as what you see on the slide. Just let us know what you think about the tips that have been introduced and what you think in terms of which choices that you are most likely to implement or you think are relevant to your situations at your business or destinations. And we'll give everyone a little bit of a time, 1 minute or so. We're seeing some answers come in. It's always interesting to see sort of the spread. There is no, of course, right or wrong answers here. We would be just interested in seeing, which of the tips really resonate with you and which ones maybe a lot of people find difficult or easy to adopt. And I'm seeing at this point, I think B, be trustworthy, C, be honest, E, be engaging. We're getting a lot of vote. It might be, Xavier, it might be the case, do you think, with the businesses that you worked with or you are working with, being humorous, is that something that is difficult for a lot of people, do you think?
I think you're quite right. It's difficult for a lot of people because it requires being quite confident in the message you've got to say. And also what is humorous in one culture is not humorous in a different culture. And so even the message about smoking I just showed, I was showing it in Greece about a few days ago, and people found it more offensive than when I was showing it in Holland, because it also says more about in which countries there will be more propensity to not want to listen to messages that sound authoritative, as well as whether the practices you're suggesting to do or to not do are socially accepted values or not. Interesting to see, therefore, the kind of answers that we're getting back from this. I'll continue on to then what would be the kind of things I would suggest in terms of trying to attract more customers. And in terms of attracting more customers, it seems to me that the first thing you ought to try and do is be more unique. Okay, so we find very often that, for example, providing local food and knowing where it's from would be enough, but actually customers need to know how that food is more unique, or what it is that makes you different about it. And we found, for example, in work done here in Scotland, the visitors are willing to pay up to 15% more for food that will have the Scottish origin, but actually the businesses that promote that the food comes from the Scottish origin and emphasize the quality of this, where the food came from, actually increase their sales by 20% more. So increase the number of sales plus increasing on willingness to pay for the actual products is rather good news. And we see very often the need to provide benefits as part of being unique. So we've seen businesses saying to us, I will give you a 10% discount if you come without a car. And if you use public transport instead, we'll give you tickets to enter particular attractions, we'll give you discounts on cycle hire and so on. And particularly for the businesses that were coming for the midweek conference market in this particular case, because of course those individuals were not willing to get to the hotel and then travel around in the area, but they were just trying to get the hotel and stay inside the hotel, they found that this was a very successful proposition. You'll have to be seen, and you'll need to make sure that you use whichever awards or certification programs to demonstrate that your criteria for sustainability and the content that you explain about how you're sustainable elsewhere on your website can be trusted. And we see that there's an increase in the number of customers that basically say, I will trust the messages that this business is giving me about sustainability when I already see, or when I also see that they have been backed up by these third-party independent evidence. And linked to being seen, of course, you'll have to be found. And being found requires for you to think about using sustainability messages as a way of improving the search engine optimization of your website, but also getting others to talk about you and linking with you. And I know that already in Training Aid, there's been other courses that look specifically at this topic, so I'm not going to look at them specifically in here. But in itself, being a sustainable product is not going to be enough. You'll need to get others, of course, to talk positively about you, whether it's you improving the quality of your own website or getting third parties to talk positively about you. You'll need to make sure that you're remembered, and by doing this, what you're trying to do is making sure that you can share some meaningful content in your social media, and that this meaningful content is sticky. And by basically saying that it's sticky is that I'm trying to find ways in which people will want to talk about it, and there will be the interest in sharing that content. And one of the things I find very often in people's websites is that they're not really telling me enough about what I'll be able to look forward to when I come to your property. So very often the photos that we've got are there all year round, and it shows me what just happened. So when I do training, for example, in Spain, a warm destination, and I'll say to companies, say for example in October, why is it that all the photos on your website show me people wearing summer clothing? Basically, in October, if you're telling me that everybody is wearing summer clothing, you're telling me in effect that it's not worthwhile coming to your destination until I can be wearing those kind of clothes. In the same way that your supermarkets, your clothes retailers, for example, are selling you winter clothing in October and they're selling you spring clothing in February, what they're selling you basically is the clothing you'll be able to look forward to wearing 1, 2, 3 months down the line. They're not selling you the clothing that you were wearing 3 months ago. So you need to think about exactly the same when it comes to your own social media content. If you put on your social media photo saying, last weekend I had a great party, what you're telling me is, okay, well, it's quite likely that to be able to come back to that particular festival, I'll now have to wait for 12 months, okay, because it's a once a year festival. I just came across a website earlier on this morning that in their sustainability policy, they said, I minimize waste by evaluating operations and ensuring they're fit for purpose. And I'm thinking, really, are you kidding me? You really expect customers to come and stay with you because you gave me a message like that? So ultimately, linked to the idea of being remembered, you need to make sure that you're being shared. And some of the messages about being shared are actually produced at the moment by destinations that are not necessarily very well-known tourist destinations. So, Compassionate Kozhikode is a destination in Kerala. It's a project basically run by a friend of ours, Gopi from Blue Yonder, that has been trying to do something around creating better places for people to live in, and as a consequence of that, better places for people to visit. And his A to Z of responsible tourism has also achieved the same kind of incentive. The idea that people are sharing and talk about things, and as a result of talking about it, because it's interesting, because it's well presented, then they have been able to find more demand for some of those points. So the slide will come up in a second that shows you which would be some of the tips that we've just talked about now that you think you would be most likely to find yourself doing first, trying to create this unique website, making sure that not only the product is unique, but that you're more seen through that website, making sure that you improve the search engine optimization and the links with other websites so your website is more found, making sure you use your social media so what you talk about on your website is remembered by others, or also writing those social media messages in a way that they will be shared by others.
And we're seeing A and D at this point, be unique, be remembered, receiving slightly more votes than the others, but I think the spread is pretty equal. Be found, also be shared, but I think still be unique, be remembered seems to be leading, and be seen. It might be be seen, be found. Tips that are related to SEO and sort of social media marketing. Maybe those are steps or maybe approaches that a lot of people think require a little bit more step. It might also be the case that that maybe there are not existing SEO efforts or practices within businesses, and I think being unique and being remembered, crafting messages in a way that's memorable, maybe that's something more approachable. Just from the quick response here.
Yeah, and it makes sense because you first need to be unique to be able to then do any of the things that come afterwards. So I can understand why we're looking at it in that particular way.
Yeah.
Okay, so our third section here looks at how you're going to use sustainability as a way of improving your customer satisfaction. Because ultimately, if you want to increase your sales eventually, working through improved customer satisfaction is going to be central to that. And a key aspect of that is, remember, in here, I'm not trying to sell them more. I'm not trying to make more money. I just want my current customers to be happier with the choice they made. That in itself will have consequences, but let's start here. First point here is just try and make your customers feel good about the product they bought with you. And very often telling them about the provenance of your food, describing in your menus where it came from, showing how you care by basically cross-selling. So showing them how you can go to some of the food suppliers that you're using and giving them a map of where they are and explain to them when they open. And all of this can help a lot. The photo here to the right-hand side of this lovely lady with her yogurt is part of a booklet that basically you find at your breakfast table in a hotel in Ireland. And the food basically, the booklet starts by saying, who made my breakfast? And this would be a double-page spread. It's quite a small booklet. And each double-page spread would tell you about one of the producers of the food. And what is interesting about this booklet is that the hotel has not changed the food they're supplying, but as a result of producing this booklet, when people look at the customer satisfaction questionnaires, people now rate the customer satisfaction with the very same breakfast much higher than they used to before. And this is a result of the reinforced positive message that came from this particular booklet. Second element here would be making sure that you use appealing language. So you ought to learn how to use storytelling for emotional appeal. And I know with Training 8, we already looked at these in another one of the workshops. But make sure you first use appealing language and then use backup factual language instead. So if you just provided the facts, if you just gave me the carbon footprint per guest per night, and that's it, very few customers would find that a message that resonates with them. However, if you give me an emotional appealing language first, and we then find a way of saying, I'm going to give you a factual message on the back of it, I'm going to use the factual data as a way of making sure I can trust the emotional message, but the one that will really resonate with me will be the emotional message. So emotional messages would be messages like this, where a photo in itself basically is just making you go, oh, and it's that kind of idea of making you feel soft inside that really sells all the time. This is a company that makes sure that all of their glamping holidays are in in areas where the farmers do not use pesticides, look after the environment, increase biodiversity. You won't see any of that on the website. What the website basically says is, these are the best loved family holidays in the land. And the sustainability elements are all implicit within that. And here's a second example of a property that basically rescued this particular duck when it was a baby duck and it was otherwise going to get killed. It was found on the road on the way to work by the manager of the hotel, and it was adopted as the hotel's mascot. And they've been able to do all sorts of things as a result of doing this, including writing a book about it with photos and having door stoppers and selling calendars. And now the duck walks around the hotel like if it was the manager. People phone in and say, I want to come for lunch. Is Crispy in today? So there's all sorts of emotional messages like this that you'll be able to use as a way of trying to sell a story and sell a message about a particular place. Try and find a way of telling the customers what's in it for them. So what I'm trying to say here is, if you say to the customers that this is going to be fresh, trustworthy, more enjoyable, unadulterated, honest food, is going to sell a lot more than even telling me that it's slow food or that it's kilometer zero food, or just focusing on the more technical words. Frankly, if you can use one syllable words to say the customer benefit, as opposed to 3-syllable words, always go for the shorter words. Okay, so whenever you ask a customer to change their behavior, you need to offer me something in return. And offering me something in return could well include, for example, saying to the customer, look, we're not just going to give money to charity from your donations or from the price you're paying for coming to stay here with us, but actually we're going to involve you as a customer in deciding where some of this money may well be given. And again, that empowerment, that linking the customer to deciding where they may want to give the money, is really helpful as a way of getting customers to engage. And fundamentally, we need to make sure that we make it really easy for the customer to make some of these choices. So these people are on holiday. They do not want added stress. What they really want is for you to look after that responsibility rather than giving them the responsibility of making sustainable choices. So try and make sure that the standard product that you're offering is the sustainable product, and that you make the non-sustainable product the price premium product, or the product is different, or the product is harder to find. Okay, and we could easily find this, for example, in how you recommend people to come to your place. How many of you, if I go to the tab on your website that says how to get there, the first option will be drive here, it's only 20 minutes, or drive here, we're only 3 hours away from New York City or from London or wherever. And then the second option will be, and if you want to fly, this is how you get here. And the fifth option may end up being, there's a public transport system. Okay, so try and find ways of explaining the sustainability as part of the better service. So we found, for example, that a number of chains of hotels, at least in Europe and I think elsewhere too, are now finding that as part of RFPs, requests for products, they're now being expected to show the sustainability of the products and services that they offer. And particularly if they want to sell to the business market, they need to make sure that they're demonstrating sustainability practices, sustainability standards, and quite often those need to be certified. So HCMI data, for example, Hotel Management Carbon Initiative, standardized methods of calculating carbon footprint per guest per night are quite useful. But also there's other criteria that we find very often the corporate customers are expecting you to provide evidence for as part of your purchasing process. And so more and more hotel groups are basically saying we're integrating the sustainability questions that are typical in RFPs as part of our internal management systems and KPIs. These, of course, may well work better for business travelers, but at the end of the day, this is going to spread at some point. I do think that sustainability requirements in marketing are much more useful right now as part of corporate travel than they are as part of leisure travel. Moving on, option E, let's make sure that you help your customers take decisions. So think very carefully what sustainability information your customer is going to need at different points in the customer journey. The best way to think about this is what information do you want yourself to be given to you when you are engaging in travel? And you'll think very clearly that sometimes the information you need before you book to help you decide that this is the right business for you is going to be different than the information you're going to need from that business once you've already booked, but before you've actually traveled to the place, or at the beginning of your tour, or at the arrival of your property, or during the stay, or during that particular tour, or the information you may want afterwards. And there is never the message, I am a sustainable hotel, right, that actually proves useful to take any one of those decisions that you need at any one of those 5 different stages. Okay, you need to think about much more specific and concrete messages that would help that customer to take a decision. So there will be information your customer may need to know on how to pack for coming on holiday with you, what things to bring, what activities they should be able to do. And they will probably need that in step 2 after booking, but not necessarily before booking. And you can show your sustainability by helping your customer pack the right things and not bring the wrong materials. Okay, for example, you're a business in a Muslim country. Make sure that you tell your customers what kind of clothing will be appropriate to wear in different circumstances, but do it also in a way that the customer finds it helpful. Any information you find that the customer will find unhelpful is not going to be information that the customer is going to thank you for. Okay? So, linked to all this, I will want you to think about the different tips that you would be most likely to implement at this point in time to make sure your customers improve their satisfaction. So, are you going to make your customers happier to have made the choice of coming with you by making them feel good because you made some of the easy choices for them? Are you going to do it in a way that you'll use appealing language so they feel engaged with the products that you're offering to them? Are you going to emphasize much more clearly what the benefits are to them as a customer from buying a product that happened to be sustainable? Are you going to offer the sustainability choices as the default choices, so it is easier for them to naturally buy those? Or are you going to think about the way in which customers need to take decisions at different points in the customer journey so they find the information you give them really useful?
What's in it for them is receiving a lot of votes at this point in the live poll results right now, which is interesting, but I think that it is also a recognition of the fact that it is from the business perspective as well as travelers' perspective. It's always important factor in decision making for booking travel or anything else. I think it's sort of human nature to ask, what's in it for me?
Great. Yeah. But it's interesting you should say that, Ayako. We analyzed recently 1,800 messages from hotels that have sustainability credentials and have won the Tourism for Tomorrow Awards and the Responsible Tourism Awards and so on. Less than 30% of the messages had a customer benefit, and nearly 70% of the messages, either there was a benefit that was for the planet or for the business, or it was actually unclear who would benefit from that practice. Okay. So while the majority of people listening today thinking, oh yeah, I'm really good at that, that's what I do, or that's what I would do, actually the majority of us don't do that particularly well. So it would be worthwhile going back to some of your messages and trying to get a sense of how well you actually do it.
Yeah, so it's an area where there's more opportunities for improvement.
Indeed. Yeah. So point number 4, and we're running out of time fast here. How do you use sustainability marketing to increase your customer expenditure? How do you do it in a way that your customers will basically want to spend more money with you? Well, we have already seen evidence that by making the customers feel special, which would increase their trust and would make them feel much more at ease with you, and by emphasizing where the produce come from, you can offer them a unique service and a sense of exclusivity. And you need to communicate not only that the product is good, but how exclusive and how unique and rare it is to be able to have this kind of products, and offering particularly specific products only for your most loyal customers that make them feel rewarded. So I've worked with hotels where we've put together specific campaigns for customers who are regular repeat customers, and we've said to them, because you are such an amazing customer, if you come back next time with another friend, we're going to do this for you that nobody else gets to do. And actually, even you won't be able to do that if you come back alone. We'll only offer it to you if you come back with a friend. Basically, what we're trying to do is double the expenditure, but also make sure that we get one more loyal customer just like you are. Okay? And there would be all sorts of sustainability related activities that we would be able to look at along those lines. And it's really actually quite simple to do this. It's fairly difficult to pronounce this. We call them Inchinos. Okay, it's the idea of mixing the idea of cappuccinos and puffins. Puffins are actually delightful little birds, and there is an area here near where I live here in the UK, where there's a massive colony of puffins, and the little ones are born around June. And during the month of June, the cafes nearby, when they sprinkle the chocolate on your cappuccino, rather than sprinkling it all over the place, they have this shape of a puffin, and they sprinkle it in the shape of a puffin. And when they bring you your cappuccino, they say to you, your cappuccino today is a cappuccincino, because we're celebrating that now all these puffins are being born. And it's only 5 kilometers from here. It's really interesting. You may want to go and have a look. And it creates a different kind of sense of feeling, and it's a different form also of storytelling. And it's a form of storytelling that a lot of people will say, wow, this is really interesting. I may actually go there, in a way that if you had been given a leaflet, you wouldn't necessarily do so. You need to make sure that your customers are more loyal to you and they spend more money by giving them more things to do. And more things to do can happen at any point in time, but you need to give them things to do that will mean that the customers will say, look, I can't just possibly go there for a weekend. I need to go and stay for at least 3 or 4 nights, because actually there are so many different activities. And the same message that we have seen very often when we go as customers ourselves to a restaurant, and the waiter comes along and says, and what else would you like with that? Right? And you think, well, that would seem like a really daft message, but actually it is proven that those kind of messages sell. So you need to find ways of upselling by providing more alternative and interesting activities to do. So if you are, for example, an accommodation provider, you will make the money by selling accommodation. But if you're able to say, look, here are 25 really interesting things to do near my property, you don't necessarily try to make more money by getting commission from those activities. You may try to, but it's not necessary. What you're trying to do is make sure that people will stay longer with you in your property. And you can try to improve the experience as well within the property. You can try and find ways of saying, let's look at some of the work we've seen around the experience economy as a way of saying, well, how do I get people to participate? People are willing to pay more for things they can experience firsthand than necessarily for things that have been done for them. So this particular property basically has a case where around 7 p.m. every day they come out and they say to the customers, look, if you want to be part of choosing which vegetables we're going to eat for dinner today, you can come out at 7 o'clock, meet the chef, and decide together with the chef what the menu is going to have today. Okay, so you go back inside the restaurant, and at the table it says, this is the non-menu. And it's called the non-menu because when you open it, it says, our menu is so fresh, we wouldn't even have time to print it. So if you want to know what you can eat today, 7 p.m., come outside and talk to the chef and you'll see what's being brought in. Or ask the waiter. Okay, and they found a more elegant way of putting it across, and I'm not really doing them justice right now. But the idea basically here is trying to turn what could have been seen as a negative into something that could possibly be a positive, because it's much more of an experience. Try and upsell as well by packaging your services. So find a way of bundling services to increase your revenue. Link your essential product or your most known product or the product for which you've got the highest sale together with some of the products where you may well have the highest profit margin, or products that would be new to the market products that otherwise the customer may not get to know. And you'll try to do this as a way of introducing new products in the marketplace. But also, if those are products with a high profit margin, look, at the end of the day, the cost of you delivering this product for people to try them for the first time was relatively little, and you try to do this as a way of getting customers to feel that they're getting a much more complete value out of their purchase. So again, we're looking at which of the tips you would be most likely to implement, and what I'm trying to get you to think about here is what would be the easiest thing for you to do at this point. Would it be to make the customers feel special by giving them products that other people don't have, but making them very aware that they felt special, that they're special for this? Would you give them activities, things to do, as a way of trying to get them to stay for longer? Would you try and find ways of improving their experience by providing them more things that are built into the actual package to do? Or would you try to package services by providing them these extra products and services that otherwise they may not be buying by themselves, but by putting them all together, they feel like it is much more of a complete package?
And it looks like a lot of people, most people, have selected B and C, give them thing to do, as well as improve the experience. Give them thing to do, I think, have received most votes for now. Is either A or D or any of these options? Have you noticed also with your work with other businesses, are any of them where you identify as a lot of businesses are lacking or sort of missing opportunities on?
Yes, it's hard, and particularly on A, it means that people need to have a much better handle of their database of previous customers.
Right.
And therefore it requires a much more careful segmentation and specific campaigns for particular moments in time. Having said that, it is quite possible to do that. We've worked with businesses in saying, come and be a midwife for a baby lamb. Come in March when it's freezing cold, frankly, at least here in the UK, and be part of seeing baby lambs be born. And what they're telling us is that, if they sold this to everybody, it just wouldn't work. And they wanted to segment their customers and say there is a particular customer group that normally comes in summer or early autumn that we wanted to incentivize to get them to come twice a year rather than once per year. And this particular business tells me that March is the new August for them. Okay, so there's ways in which we can do some of these packages, to try and make it work for them. Giving them things to do and having a more comprehensive list of things to do is a much easier way of doing it. Okay, let me look at the fifth. And actually, I have cheated. In my original slides, I had said there were going to be 6 financial benefits, and there are 6 financial benefits. But because of the timing, I've now bundled together increasing customer loyalty and reducing seasonality, 2 of the benefits into one. Otherwise, we're not really going to have time for questions and answers. So making people aware, for example, reinforcing to people they've already made the right choice. This is a plastic bench. At the beginning of this particular walk, there used to be signs that said, please recycle. Nobody did it. Why? Because at the car park is not the moment when you're thinking of recycling. Your backpack is still full of all your lunch at that point. Actually, when you're most likely to drop litter is when you're sitting down for your picnic. So when we got to the bench for the picnic, on the bench there is a sign that says, well done. Your first 5,000 bottles that you recycled have allowed us to produce this plastic bench so you can enjoy the view. People always respond much better to a message that starts with the words well done than to a message that starts with the words don't do something. Okay? And you were much more likely to then respond well to this message also, because this was the point in time when you were tempted to actually forget the wrapping on your sandwiches or the can or the bottle that you were just using as part of your lunch. So reinforce the perception of making the right choice by letting people know how that is going to do something good for them. And this is true, and we have learned about this in charitable donations over the last few years. If you just say to people, give to charity, they don't give very much. If you say to them, £10, $20 will buy this. And then you're thinking, okay, so now I know that $20 will mean 2 children will not catch malaria because they'll have malaria nets. Now that it's not an abstract concept anymore. Now there's something very specific, and I can link cause and consequence. I am much more likely to do it than when it was just an abstract concept. You'll try to weatherproof your offer, and weatherproofing your offer can be done anywhere in the world. I work with businesses and making sure they have a list of things to do when it rains. And it listed all sorts of things, that actually could be done better when it rained, because we're able to say to them, well, there are particular historic homes that you can visit on a rainy day, and because you get a year-round ticket when you enter, you get a ticket that lasts for 12 months, the historic home will be much quieter and you'll get a much more private visit. Or you can go to a place to learn how to make your own pottery, or you can go to a glassworks place and you can learn how to make your own whatever. Or so we listed all sorts of arts and crafts that people could do. But actually, it didn't really matter whether it was a sunny day or not. So we listed all of that under the what to do on a rainy day instead, or what to do on a cold day. But actually, in a different destination, you may say, hey, we need to have a list of things to do when it's too hot. I remember a business in Egypt that we taught people how to make their own hummus. Okay, there'll be businesses in Italy that will say, we'll teach you how to make your own dough for a pizza, and so on and so forth. So you have to find ways in which you give people that information that makes them feel, I wasn't going to go there for very long because it always rains in the UK, but now that you've shown me how there will be so many interesting things to do on a rainy day, I don't feel so much that's going to be a problem, therefore I'll be able to stay for longer. Or add a calendar and make sure that you show me from, for example, your wildlife calendar, what will be the different months when I'll be able to best see different bird species, different flowers. So calendars are not only there for different festivals, but give me a food calendar. Give me a food calendar of when at different times of the year we'll be able to do different things. Give me a calendar, give me photos of what your garden will look like at different months of the year. Okay, show it to me, and you can do this to attract people for the first time, but actually it's also really useful to try and say to people, you came in February, you know what? You need to come back in autumn next time, because also in October, the garden is going to look like this. Okay, so I've seen many people having one of those coffee table books that has photos of the garden of their property, and it has different photos for the entire year to show to people that every month that you come to, actually this landscape is going to look quite different, and you will be able to do different things. And try and give me reasons to return. And I wanted to finish with this particular example. And this is a very example close to my heart, not only because Mary, the owner of this property, is only about 30 miles away from where I am, but also because Mary is about 80 years old. And she basically said to me, Xavier, sustainability marketing doesn't work, doesn't make any sense. And I said, okay, Mary, tell me what you do then. And she said, well, with the customers that I like, not everybody, I take them out to our flower meadows and I show them how to collect some flowers. And I help them press those flowers, and I keep them pressed for them, because if any of you pressed flowers when you were children, you know you can't just take them home straight away. So I get them to press the flowers, and I give them a card, and I get the children in the family to draw on that postcard. And then I give them an envelope, and I get them to write their address on the envelope. And the week before Christmas, I get the flowers you children pressed, and I stick them on the card you children drew, and I put it on the envelope that your own children wrote, and I send it to you with a voucher saying, book by the 15th of January for a 15% discount. Guess which is the Christmas card that is most prominent on the mantelpiece throughout Christmas? The one that you made, and the one that helps you reminisce of the holiday that you had. So at the end of the day, it is important that you find creative ways of communicating sustainability or aspects of sustainability they relate to something that makes sense for you as a business. So I'm offering you 4 more ideas of how to do that. You will try to make customers aware of what you've done for them. You will try to weatherproof your offer. You will add calendars to your offering, and you will give them reasons to return that have a sustainability element built in.
I think that the story, I was just thinking that the example from your last option is really a great story and great example, and that might also have been the reason that a lot of people have selected D, but also in recognition of the fact that it, of course, is important in encouraging more customers to return, increasing customer loyalty, also, of course, important for business bottom line. Yeah, I'm seeing D, more than half the people have selected D, followed by C, and then the rest.
And it's very interesting because, of course, I could sell D by telling you a story about it. The majority of businesses never do it. The majority of US businesses have a really desperate sounding social media message or newsletter that just says, please, please, please come back, I'm desperate.
Yeah.
And you never actually something that is cute and quaint and storytelling related that gets your customers feel really gooey inside and makes them just think, oh my God, I really have to go back to that place.
Yeah, and your example was really a really good story of creating connections with the customers. Like you said, I think that the key part of why it works is that they're involved, and of course the children are involved, which helps, I think. But that they were part of the experience of creating that connection that encourages them again to come back. So I think that's I found that was an excellent story as well as a great example to wrap up this part of the presentation. And I would like to, at this point, if you're okay with that, Xavier, to open for questions. And if we can start with the question that we received before the session, and I can read this. And this was a question about how about a mature tourism market which lacks sustainability awareness makes convincing, and how can one make a convincing case for sustainable practices and appropriate training for business owners when the attitude that they have is we don't need it?
This is a very good point. I would certainly not start with marketing, because the problem is that they'll get carried away with marketing products as sustainable when they're not. I think with a destination like that, we'll have to start with the very simple eco-savings messages of you need to be more sustainable because you'll save money through saving water, waste, and reducing energy consumption. And from there, hopefully to build a conscience on the back of that. I do a lot of work on training tourist destinations and business in these topics. I've run the responsible tourism communication course now more than 90 times with 1,600 businesses. And what I find is in some of these more mature destinations, we need to start with the lower hanging fruit of how do we get better communication to get customers to engage with helping you with the savings. And then from there, we then need to segment different groups in the destination for different reasons. So what I'm not going to be able to do is to provide a training for all businesses in that destination, because their motivations are going to be quite different and the way in which we're going to approach them is quite different.
Yeah, thanks. The next question, so we're being conscious of them. How can business owners keep being genuine in their relationship with the customer when the bottom line is to convince the customer to part with their money?
I don't feel that the two have to, go against each other. I mean, you're trying to get them to part with their money, but in a legal way. You're not asking them to do something that isn't legal, and ultimately you're trying to sell them genuinely better products. So I'm not suggesting that you sell them a substandard product. And I think the problem is that marketing has very often been used as a way of selling products that are not fit for purpose. And in that sense, I do agree that marketing has deservedly got a bad reputation. On the other hand, if you make sure that you use better marketing communication to provide a fundamentally better quality product that is more in tune with the customer needs and that is easier for the consumer to enjoy and to use, I don't really see anything immoral about that.
Yeah, and I think that was sort of the overarching question about, why are we talking about financial bottom line and sustainability, and an important message that you have, and you have been leading, I think, in this area and really spreading the message, which is really important to a lot of businesses and destinations. And this next question from Mei Lu: do you think that sustainable excursions, for example, will be the main reason for travelers to choose a company or destination?
I think so, providing that the sustainability element of excursion has a customer benefit. Mm-hmm. If it has a plain altruistic benefit, but there isn't a way of saying to the customer what's in it for me, it's going to be very hard to sell it. Psychology has taught us that customers will not think that the product can be better priced, better quality, and more convenient. In Spanish, we call it bueno, bonito, y barato. You're not going to get the three at the same time. It cannot be better, it cannot be beautiful, and it cannot be cheaper all at the same time. Choice heuristics, if you want to look at behavioral economics, will explain to you the customers will think that those things cannot happen. So the challenge that we've got in here is making sure that the customer sees what's in it for them as a result of this more unique, better experience.
Great. I think going back to one of the tips that you had also again about explaining clearly the benefits for customers in your communications. And this next two-part question, I will read the first one first by Lauren. What are the ways to measure behavior change after implementing new messages or sustainability marketing strategies?
We as a research team conduct a lot of experiments for businesses on precisely that, and I've run them both for the big tour operators and the hotels as well as for the small ones. So we've looked at ways in which we can implement different messages, for example, to get customers to use less heating, or to turn down the air conditioning at night, or to have shorter showers. That when we got to those hotels and they had really plain messages that said, did you know that the amount of water used in a shower in this hotel could be used to feed a family for a week in our destination? These messages will never work. So we've now found ways of changing the message and actually having sub-metering in the hotel, that on a room per room basis in this case, that told us by how much could we reduce the amount of water consumed by changing the message slightly, using different psychological theories to get the customer to change that behavior. So in the same way that we know that changing a standard light bulb to an LED light bulb will produce a certain amount of saving, I'm now working with TUI in particular as a way of being able to get the data of by how much will we save water, waste, energy, and so on through better messages.
And for anyone listening right now who are representing businesses and destinations that are interested in actually implementing such research and tracking and monitoring of impact, I would recommend the contact information that you see right now on the screen to contact Xavier for more information at Responsible Tourism Communication. But to go on to the second part of the two-part question, how do you market or explain responsible sourcing to customers would the same strategies apply?
Responsible sourcing, that's a good one. And we could easily apply this, for example, to looking at food. When it comes to food, I mean, I like to talk about children and I like to talk about food. Both of them are close to my heart. And I think that it's sustainable food is now understood to be quite similar to local food. Clearly, it's not always the case. But being able to tell the stories of the suppliers of that food, their personal stories, showing their photos, showing how they take care of that food. Why is it important for them to do it? What are the methods of production? But then enhancing the information there that also says, why does the taste of this product why is the taste better as a result of it makes a lot of sense. And quite often simply communicating this is sustainable food won't do it. I'll give you the example, for example, of eggs. If I'm a hotel and I want to sell sustainability as nostalgia, because most of my customers are over the age of 60, I will tell them, do you remember when omelettes were beautiful and yellow and intense in color, rather than the anemic white things that you get now when you buy eggs in a supermarket? Well, that's what our omelettes look like, because we know where the eggs came from. Whereas if I want to sell sustainable eggs or locally produced eggs in this case, to a family, the message I'm going to use is, do your children know where the eggs came from? From a chicken's bottom. And just even the fact they use the word bottom will just make the children giggle. And engaging the children actually going to collect the eggs and see where they came from and so on is going to be much more engaging and participatory. So the same idea of the very same eggs, communicated as nostalgia or communicated as an experience, allow you to basically enhance the value that those eggs have to the consumer.
And that was, I think, one of the most important takeaways, I think, for me as well, was to, as many of the tips mentioned, make your messages interesting and engaging, and not make sustainability a boring, unengaging, number-based statements to your customers, or rather use more interesting and smart approaches to engage them. And I think that hopefully that was useful takeaway, as well as many tips that we've received today. And we're running out of time. We are at the end of the hour. So this will conclude our session. And thank you so much, everyone, for all the questions and comments. And I hope that you will continue engaging with Savia on social media and on Respond Eco's website as well. And let's continue this important conversation online and offline. Thanks again so much, Savia, for your excellent presentation and for everyone who joined today and contributed to the conversation. Thank you.